still hear us.
All right. Hi, everybody. We are live. This is a little bit of everybody. Tomorrow's show will be on after this. We're listening to the Health Canada regulations announcement. What is it, like 5.0?
Yeah. For Prohibition 2.0.
Yeah, so we're going to mute our mics when they start talking, and then you'll be able to listen to everything live. And yeah,
Cool.
what do you guys?
That was just wishful thinking there.
Yeah, it was.
The music stopped.
So what do you guys expect?
Music to smoke by.
Yeah.
You know what? At this point,
What I'm hoping is microbes.
At this point, I have no
What
idea.
it won't be
I'm
is
just kind of
microbes.
sitting here, waiting like everybody else. They say one thing, and I'm going to do another way.
All participants, please continue to stand by. The conference will begin momentarily. Once again, please continue to stand by, and we thank you for your patience. À tous les participants, nous vous remercions de bien vouloir patienter. La conférence débutera sous peu. De nouveau, nous vous remercions de votre patience. During the question and answer session, if you have a question, please press star 1. If you have a question and you are using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before making your selection. If at any time you wish to cancel your question, please press the pound sign. Durant la séance de questions et réponses, si vous avez une question, appuyez sur étoile 1. Si vous utilisez un téléphone main libre, s'il vous plaît, soulevez le combiné avant d'effectuer votre sélection. Si vous désirez annuler votre question, appuyez sur le dièse. Nous vous prions de bien vouloir attendre quelques instants et nous vous remercions de votre patience. Once again, please continue to stand by, and we thank you for your patience.
Awesome.
They will be along shortly. Something tells me that part of this discussion will be a reminder that cannabis is still illegal until October the 17th.
And dispensaries are still illegal.
Yeah. So following this broadcast, you're going to switch, tomorrow's show will continue?
I will take a break and shut everything off and turn on tomorrow's show, yeah.
Cool. Busy day here at Lifestyle Radio.
Yep. Here comes Miss Clicky. Hello, Miss Clicky.
All participants, please continue to stand by. The conference will begin momentarily. During the question and answer session, if you have a question, please press star 1. If you have a question and you are using a speakerphone, please lift your handset before making your selection. If at any time you wish to cancel your question, please press the pound sign. Once again, please continue to stand by, and we thank you for your patience. Nous vous remercions de bien vouloir patienter. La conférence débutera sous peu. Durant la séance de questions et réponses, si vous avez une question, appuyez sur étoile 1. Si vous utilisez un téléphone main libre, s'il vous plaît, soulevez le combiné avant d'effectuer votre sélection. Si vous désirez annuler votre question, appuyez sur le dièse. Alors, nous vous prions de bien vouloir attendre encore quelques instants et nous vous remercions de patienter.
Anybody want to go figure skating?
I don't know, to me, it's more like a bad dream.
Wait,
Same
Freddy's
thing
coming.
over and over.
No, the bad dream will be after this thing is over.
Yeah.
Bob the head music.
Sometimes it's a little more livelier when you hear it in the radio station or at the doctor's office.
Yeah. It's still the same thing over and over again, though.
Yeah. I was
Morning.
See, Tamara's here. Kinda. Can't understand her, but she's here.
I don't know what the hell's going on with my mic.
All right, just remember, everybody, that they can hear us. Okay,
So you can't say names or anything.
yeah, don't say my name, Marcel.
Hello everyone, bonjour à tous.
Okay,
Welcome
here we
and
go.
thank you for participating in today's technical briefing to discuss the regulations of cannabis. Je me présente, Eric Morissette from Media Relations at Health Canada. Today's session will begin shortly with some opening remarks from Mr. Eric Costin, Director General for the Cannabis
Unmuting
Legalization
us,
and
okay?
Regulation Branch at Health Canada. Mr. Costin will be accompanied by Diane Labelle, General Counsel for Health Canada, for the French portion of the remarks. You should have received a package a few minutes ago by email. If you have not received that package as of yet, please send an email to hc.media.sc
Can you all mute your mics, please?
at canada.ca. Mr. Costin and Ms. Labelle will be accompanied by officials from Justice Canada, Public Safety Canada, Canada Border Services Agency, as well as Global Affairs Canada to answer some questions. We will then open the telephone line to questions for the media. Il y aura d'abord une courte présentation, puis nous répondrons à vos questions au téléphone. If you wish to ask a question, please press star 1 on your phone. Si vous désirez poser une question, veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1. Attribution of statements made during today's technical briefing can be attributed to Government of Canada officials. Les renseignements fournis au cours de la présente séance d'information technique peuvent être attribués aux représentants du gouvernement du Canada. Procédons à la séance d'information technique. Let's begin today's technical briefing. Over to you, Eric.
Hello, bonjour tout le monde. So today I will provide you with details regarding new regulations made under the Cannabis Act, which received royal assent on June 21st. These regulations are final, and they're available in PDF format from Health Canada. We expect that they will be published in Canada Gazette Part 2 on July 11th. These regulations will come into force at the same time as the Cannabis Act on October 17th. To begin, cannabis will no longer be a controlled substance under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act or long-standing regulations such as the Narcotic Control Regulations, the Industrial Hemp Regulations, and the Access to Cannabis for Medical Purposes Regulations, or the ACMPR. Cannabis will be subject to new regulations. I will speak to the main regulations, which are the Cannabis Regulations and in the Industrial Hemp Regulations. Many of the provisions that are set out in these new regulations maintain those which are in place under previous regulations. In other instances, they introduce new provisions tailored to achieve the goal of the Cannabis Act. The majority of these we first described in our consultation documents, published in November of 2017 and in March of 2018. In developing these regulations, we have applied lessons learned from years of experience regulating cannabis and have reflected the advice provided to us by experts, indigenous groups, other governments, and industry. Significant feedback was provided during the consultations that we held last fall and winter. Notably, the regulations are also informed by the recommendations from the Task Force on Cannabis Legalization and Regulation. Overall, they establish the rules and the standards for the authorized production, distribution, sale, import, and export of cannabis. And in doing so, they support the government's public health and safety goals. The cannabis regulations are comprised of 16 parts. I will briefly describe the key features of these regulations. I'll begin at Part 2, which set out a system of licenses, permits, and authorizations that allow for a range of different activities with cannabis. This approach is intended to enable a diverse, competitive legal industry comprised of both large and small players, while prescribing a high standard for safety and security, and specific measures to prevent diversion of cannabis into or out of the regulated system. The regulations create several classes of licenses that authorize specific activities, such as cultivation, processing, sale, analytical testing, and research. There are subclasses of licenses for cultivation and processing that differentiate between small and large-scale activities, called micro and standard, respectively. The regulations do not specify a quota for or a maximum number of licenses to be issued. Part 3 sets out requirements for personnel security. These provisions are specifically designed to prevent individuals associated with organized crime from infiltrating licensed organizations. The regulations require specified positions in the company to hold a security clearance. Building on the success of the robust personnel security provisions in the ACMPR, those in the cannabis regulations include several notable improvements. These include an expanded list of key positions that will require security clearance, including those that directly or indirectly control or influence the operations of a company, such as the person who holds the license, all of the directors and officers of the organization, the directors and officers of any parent company, and other key positions in the company, such as the master grower or the head of quality assurance. the regulations set out expanded criteria which are considered in making the determination of whether or not to grant a security clearance. Along with the robust factors that are currently considered, new determining factors include whether a person's financial activities may pose a risk to the integrity of the legal cannabis system. The goal is to exclude all those who may have ties to organized crime or have histories of serious criminality. With this in mind, the regulations do not automatically exclude individuals who have a record related to past illicit cannabis activities with cannabis and histories of violent crime. It is important to understand that each application for a security clearance is considered on its own merits, and a decision is based on the specific circumstances and facts of each individual case. The next major component of the regulations relates to the physical security requirements for licensed sites. The regulations establish physical security requirements that are specific to the licensed activity and class. All license holders, other than for analytical testing and research, are required to ensure the site is designed in a manner that prevents unauthorized access. Other physical security measures include requirements for video surveillance, intrusion detection systems, and physical barriers. There are physical security measures both for indoor and for outdoor cultivation. Part 5 of the regulations establish requirements pertaining to the production and handling of cannabis products. These establish safeguards and standards for the cultivation and processing of cannabis, such as prohibiting the use of unauthorized pesticides and mandatory testing for other contaminants. These rules are consistent with the current requirements for the production of cannabis for medical purposes. Part 6 and 7 of the regulations set out specifications for the cannabis products themselves. These include plain packaging rules and mandatory labeling provisions. These are aligned with the detailed information contained in the March Summary of Consultations document published by Health Canada. The regulations set out strict limits on the use of colors, graphics, brand elements, font sizes, and other packaging characteristics intended to limit the appeal of products to youth. There is mandatory information which must appear on the label, including THC and CBD levels, health warning messages, and a standardized cannabis symbol. Cannabis will need to be packaged in an opaque or translucent container that is tamper-evident, child-resistant, and prevents contamination. The regulations establish the maximum THC content for different forms of cannabis. For example, in oil form, the maximum amount of THC would be 30 milligrams per milliliter of oil, as is currently the case under the ACMPR. Regarding the import and the export of cannabis, the rules that exist today will remain substantively unchanged. The cannabis regulations will allow a license holder to import or export cannabis for medical or scientific purposes only, subject to obtaining a permit from Health Canada. Part 11 sets out record-keeping requirements for license holders. Accurate and detailed record-keeping is critical to ensuring the integrity of the regime and protecting the health and safety of Canadians. For instance, these requirements include specific information about the production and processing of each lot or batch of cannabis and cannabis oil. This information is essential in the event of a product recall. Part 12 identifies what information must be reported to the minister, such as the notice of the sale of a new cannabis product, the total amount of money spent in a given year on promotion, information respecting a voluntary recall of cannabis. The regulations will also establish new requirements for privately held license holders to report on an annual basis details regarding financial transactions with investors and other persons who are in a position to directly or indirectly control the license holders. Information that will need to be reported includes amounts invested or loaned, the benefit received as a result, and whether that benefit has been assigned to another person. These annual reporting requirements are in addition to the regular tracking and reporting of cannabis production, which license holders will be required to submit via the new Cannabis Tracking and Licensing System. The Cannabis Tracking and Licensing System will enable Health Canada to monitor the high-level movement of cannabis through the entire supply chain in order to prevent diversion of cannabis into or out of the legal market. After several months of careful development and testing, the system is operational and ready to be deployed. Part 14 sets out regulations regarding access to cannabis for medical purposes. Consistent with the government's commitment to maintain the existing system of access, this part substantively incorporates the previous regulations. Per our November and March consultation documents, these regulations include a number of adjustments to the medical access framework that are designed to improve patient access, such as enabling clients to transfer their medical documents. And it also creates consistency with the rules for non-medical use. I will touch briefly now on the regulation of hemp. Industrial hemp is defined as varieties of cannabis plants with concentrations of 0.03% or less THC in the flowering heads and leaves. While the new industrial hemp regulations are largely consistent with the previous regulations, some significant improvements have been made. These were also described in our November and March regulatory consultation documents. Most notably, the sale of the whole plant to licensed cannabis processors would now be permitted. This will provide a source of low THC, high CBD cannabis, which can be used to produce a wide range of CBD cannabis products. In summary, the new cannabis regulations made under the Cannabis Act have been developed to protect the health and safety of Canadians while enabling a diverse, strictly regulated industry that is capable of displacing the illegal market. They incorporate significant elements from long-standing cannabis regulations while introducing new elements designed to achieve the goals of the Cannabis Act. As you are aware, there will be a transition period between royal assent and the coming into force on October 17th. During this time, the Government of Canada will continue to work with provinces and territories, Indigenous communities, and regulated parties to promote an understanding of and compliance with the regulations and to help ensure an orderly transition to the new legal framework. My colleague will now provide this overview in French.
Bonjour à tous. Comme mon collègue Costin a indiqué, nous visons à vous fournir aujourd'hui les détails sur le règlement sur le cannabis qui est pris en vertu de la nouvelle loi sur le cannabis ayant reçu sanction royale le 21 juin. Il s'agit de la version définitive du règlement. Elle est disponible en format PDF auprès de Santé Canada. Nous prévoyons que le nouveau règlement sera publié dans la partie 2 de la Gazette du Canada le 11 juillet 2018. Tout d'abord, le cannabis ne sera plus une substance contrôlée au terme de la loi réglementant certaines drogues et autres substances, ni de règlements de longue date comme le règlement sur les stupéfiants, le règlement sur le chanvre industriel ou le règlement sur l'accès au cannabis à des fins médicales. Le cannabis sera assujetti à un nouveau règlement simplement appelé le règlement sur le cannabis. Le chanvre industriel fera l'objet d'un règlement distinct. Bon nombre de dispositions du nouveau règlement maintiennent celles mises en place dans les règlements précédents. Par ailleurs, de nouvelles dispositions visent à contribuer à l'atteinte des objectifs de la loi sur le cannabis, dont la majorité a été décrite pour la première fois dans les documents de consultation publiés en novembre 2017 et mars 2018. Au fin de l'élaboration du règlement, nous avons tenu compte des leçons tirées des années d'expérience en réglementation du cannabis, ainsi que des conseils prodigués par des experts, des groupes autochtones, d'autres gouvernements et de l'industrie. Des commentaires inestimables ont été formulés lors des consultations que nous avons tenues l'automne et l'hiver dernier. En outre, le règlement est également basé sur les recommandations du groupe de travail sur la légalisation et la réglementation du cannabis. Dans l'ensemble, le règlement établit les règles et les normes de production, de distribution, de vente, d'importation et d'exportation autorisées de cannabis et appuie ainsi les objectifs du gouvernement en matière de santé et de sécurité publique. Le règlement sur le cannabis comprend 16 parties. Je vais décrire brièvement les principales caractéristiques du règlement. Je commence à la partie 2 qui établit un système de licences, de permis et d'autorisation permettant une gamme d'activités différentes liées au cannabis. Cette approche vise à permettre la création d'une industrie légale, diversifiée et concurrentielle, composée à la fois de grands et de petits acteurs, tout en prescrivant des normes élevées en matière de sûreté et de sécurité et des mesures précises pour prévenir le détournement du cannabis illégal dans le système réglementé ou à l'inverse du cannabis légal hors de celui-ci. Le règlement établit un certain nombre de catégories de licences qui autorisent des activités particulières comme la culture, la transformation, la vente, les essais analytiques et la recherche. Il existe également des sous-catégories de licences pour la culture et la transformation qui différencient les activités à grande échelle de celles à petite échelle, appelées standard et micro respectivement. Le règlement ne fixe pas de quota ni de nombre maximal de licences qui peuvent être délivrées. À la partie 3 du règlement, on y trouve les habilitations de sécurité du personnel. Cette disposition vise expressément à empêcher les personnes associées au crime organisé d'infiltrer les organisations autorisées. Le règlement exige que les titulaires de certains postes des entreprises détiennent une habilitation de sécurité. S'appuyant sur le succès des dispositions rigides sur la sécurité du personnel contenues dans le règlement sur l'accès au cannabis à des fins médicales, celles du règlement sur le cannabis comprennent plusieurs améliorations majeures. Il s'agit notamment d'une liste élargie de postes clés dont les titulaires devront obtenir une habilitation de sécurité, y compris ceux qui contrôlent ou influencent directement ou indirectement les activités de l'entreprise, tels que le titulaire de la licence, tous les dirigeants et administrateurs de l'entreprise, les dirigeants et administrateurs de toute société mère et les titulaires des postes clés de l'entreprise comme le producteur en chef ou le préposé à l'assurance qualité. Le règlement prévoit en outre des critères accrus pour la détermination de la délivrance ou non d'une habilitation de sécurité. En plus des critères rigoureux actuellement utilisés, les nouveaux facteurs de détermination comprennent le risque que peut poser les activités financières d'une personne sur le système de cannabis légal. Cette mesure se veut un autre moyen d'exclure toute personne qui peut avoir des liens avec le crime organisé ou des antécédents d'activités criminelles graves. Cependant, le règlement n'exclut pas systématiquement les personnes qui ont un casier judiciaire en raison d'activités illicites de cannabis dans le passé, mais sans antécédents d'activités criminelles violentes. Il est important de noter que chaque demande d'habilitation de sécurité est examinée en toute objectivité et que toute décision à ce sujet repose sur les circonstances et les faits propres à chaque cas. La prochaine partie importante du règlement porte sur les exigences en matière de sécurité physique des lieux visés par leur licence. Le règlement établit des exigences en matière de sécurité physique propres à l'activité et à la catégorie autorisée. Par exemple, tous les titulaires de licence, autres que celles pour les essais analytiques et la recherche, devront s'assurer que le lieu est conçu de manière à prévenir l'accès non autorisé. D'autres mesures de sécurité physique prévoient des exigences d'avoir des systèmes de surveillance vidéo et de détection des intrusions et des barrières physiques. Il y a également des mesures de sécurité physique pour la culture intérieure et la culture extérieure. La partie 5 du règlement établit les exigences relatives à la production et à la manutention des produits du cannabis. Celles-ci établissent des normes et des mesures de sécurité sur la culture et la transformation du cannabis, notamment l'interdiction d'utiliser des pesticides non homologués et des essais obligatoires pour les autres contaminants. Ces règles sont conformes aux exigences actuelles de production de cannabis à des fins médicales. Les parties 6 et 7 du règlement décrivent les exigences visant les produits du cannabis eux-mêmes, notamment des règles sur l'emballage neutre et des dispositions obligatoires sur l'étiquetage. Ces mesures sont conformes à l'information fournie dans le résumé des commentaires de la consultation publiée en mars dernier par Santé Canada. Le règlement impose des limites strictes sur l'utilisation de couleurs, de graphiques, d'éléments de marque, de taille, de police de caractère et autres caractéristiques particulières sur l'emballage afin de limiter au maximum l'attrait des produits pour les jeunes. Des renseignements doivent obligatoirement figurer sur l'étiquette, y compris les taux de THC et de CBD, les mises en garde et le symbole normalisé du cannabis. Le cannabis devra être emballé dans un contenant opaque ou translucide muni d'un sceau d'inviolabilité à l'épreuve des enfants qui prévient la contamination et, dans le cas du cannabis séché, garde le cannabis au sec. Le règlement fixe la teneur maximale en THC de différentes formes de cannabis. Par exemple, l'huile de cannabis ne peut contenir plus de 30 mg de THC par millilitre d'huile, comme c'est actuellement le cas en vertu du règlement sur l'accès du cannabis aux fins médicales. En matière d'importation et d'exportation du cannabis, les règles actuelles demeureront essentiellement les mêmes. Le règlement sur le cannabis autorisera le titulaire d'une licence avec un permis délivré par Santé Canada à importer ou à exporter du cannabis à des fins médicales ou scientifiques ou pour les fins de change industrielles. La partie 11 énonce les exigences en matière de tenue de dossier pour les titulaires de licence. La tenue de dossier précis et détaillé est cruciale pour assurer l'intégrité du système et protéger la santé et la sécurité des Canadiens et des Canadiennes. Par exemple, ces exigences concernent des renseignements précis sur la production et la transformation de chaque lot ou lot de production du cannabis ou d'huile de cannabis. Ces renseignements sont essentiels en cas de rappel d'un produit. La partie 12 du règlement précise les renseignements qui doivent être communiqués à la ministre. Il s'agit notamment de l'information suivante: un avis de vente d'un nouveau produit du cannabis, le montant total des dépenses annuelles de promotion, renseignements sur le rappel volontaire du cannabis, réactions ou effets secondaires indésirables constatés. Le règlement établira également une nouvelle exigence pour les titulaires de licences privées de rendre compte annuellement des détails sur les activités financières avec les investisseurs et d'autres individus qui sont en mesure d'exercer un contrôle direct ou indirect sur les titulaires de licences. Les renseignements qui devront être déclarés comprennent les montants investis ou prêtés, le bénéfice tiré par conséquent et si ce bénéfice a été alloué ou non à une autre personne. Ces exigences de déclaration annuelle s'ajoutent aux activités courantes de suivi et de production de rapports liées à la production de cannabis que les titulaires de licence seront tenus de fournir au moyen du nouveau système de suivi du cannabis et de demande de licence. Ce dernier permettra le suivi d'un mouvement de cannabis de haut niveau tout au haut de la chaîne d'approvisionnement afin d'aider à prévenir le détournement du cannabis vers le marché légal ou à être détourné du marché légal. Après avoir passé plusieurs mois au développement et aux essais consciencieux, le système est maintenant fonctionnel et prêt à être déployé. La partie 14 énonce les exigences en matière d'accès au cannabis à des fins médicales. Conformément à l'engagement du gouvernement de maintenir le système d'accès existant, cette partie intègre essentiellement le règlement précédent, le règlement sur l'accès au cannabis à des fins médicales. Selon nos documents de consultation du mois de novembre et du mois de mars dernier, le règlement apporte un certain nombre de modifications au cadre d'accès médical pour améliorer l'accès pour les patients, tels que permettre aux clients de transférer leurs documents médicaux. Il assure également l'uniformité avec les règles relatives à la consommation à des fins non médicales, telles que l'élimination des limites d'entreposage personnel. Je vais maintenant aborder brièvement la réglementation du chanvre. On entend par chanvre industriel les variétés de plantes de cannabis dont les feuilles et les têtes florales contiennent 0,3% ou moins de THC. Bien que le nouveau règlement sur le chanvre industriel soit généralement conforme à la version précédente, des changements ont été apportés. Ceux-ci ont aussi été décrits dans nos documents de consultation sur l'approche réglementaire publiés en novembre et en mars dernier. Notons en particulier que la vente de la plante entière à des transformateurs de cannabis autorisés sera maintenant permise. Cela fournira une source de cannabis à faible teneur en THC et à teneur élevée en CBD pouvant être utilisée pour produire une gamme élargie de produits du cannabis à base de CBD. En résumé, le nouveau règlement sur le cannabis, pris en vertu de la loi sur le cannabis, a été élaboré dans le but de protéger la santé et la sécurité des Canadiens et des Canadiennes et de favoriser une industrie réglementée, diversifiée et stricte, capable de démanteler le marché illégal. Le règlement comprend des éléments majeurs de la version antérieure, tout en ajoutant des mesures afin d'atteindre les objectifs de la loi sur le cannabis. Comme vous le savez, il y aura une période de transition entre l'obtention de la sanction royale et l'entrée en vigueur le 17 octobre 2018. Pendant cette période, le gouvernement du Canada poursuivra sa collaboration avec les provinces et les territoires, les collectivités autochtones et les parties réglementées pour favoriser la compréhension et la conformité à la réglementation et assurer une transition ordonnée au nouveau cadre juridique. Je vous remercie de votre temps. Mes collègues et moi répondrons maintenant à vos questions.
Merci, Diane. We will now open the telephone line to questions. Please identify yourself and include the media outlet you are representing. We are also asking that you identify whom the question is addressed, and we'll be taking your question in both official languages. We ask that you limit yourself to one question and only one follow-up. Answers can be attributed to the Government of Canada officials and not for name attribution. Veuillez vous nommer et nous dire quel média vous représentez. Nous vous demandons de vous limiter à une question seulement, et à une question de suivi. Vous pouvez poser vos questions dans l'une des deux langues officielles. Nous aimerions vous rappeler que vous pouvez citer les représentants, mais les identifier comme représentants du gouvernement du Canada et non par leur nom. À vous, Paul.
Thank you. Merci. So please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. There will be a brief pause while participants register. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur l'étoile maintenant pour poser une question. Il y aura un court délai vous permettant de vous enregistrer dans la file d'attente pour la période de questions. The first question is from Marie Vastel from Le Devoir. La première question est de Marie Vastel du journal Le Devoir. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. To whoever wants to answer the question, I would like an overview of what you decided criteria to differentiate small producers from standard producers and small transformers from standard transformers. I did not get a chance to read the PDF that is 400 pages long and was sent to us as you started to speak, so I apologize if the information is in there. Could you just tell me, is there like a criteria in terms of size of the production or size of the cultivation? And in terms of security measures, are they different for small producers than from standard producers?
So, yeah, thanks for the question. I'll try to cover all of those details. So I think the easiest way to answer the question is the specifications around the difference between a micro and a standard that we first proposed in November are confirmed in the regulations. So your understanding about a micro cultivator would be defined as a cultivator who uses a surface area that does not exceed 200 square meters. That was proposed in the November paper. If you have a chance, you can look at Section 13 in the regulations. It confirms that is the threshold. With respect to the processors, the threshold that again was proposed in the fall that a microprocessor would not.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Your line is very, very bad, and I can't hear anything right now.
Okay. Should I repeat it all, or did you
No,
hear
I got
any
the
of it?
surface, but there's some sort of interference on your phone line, and I can't hear anything. I lost you at processors, but there still is buzzing sound. Okay, I think it's gone. Can you just keep going at processors, please?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm a few inches away from the mic here, so I hope that it's a little bit clearer.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So and then for the microprocessors, if you look at Section 21 of the regulations, it confirms the threshold of 600 kilos as a maximum input that a microprocessor would be held to. So again, the same specifications that you would have been familiar with when you looked at the November paper, these are confirmed. They're no different than in the regs today than what you would have seen in November. With respect to the differentiation regarding what are the sort of the physical security requirements, I would direct you to look at Part 4 of the regulations. And again, these basic regulations confirm the details that we set out in November. There's actually, and I don't think it was contained in the package which we sent out, there is a colorful table that looks specifically to enumerate the different requirements across the different classes of licenses. This is available on the Government of Canada website. It's been there for many months. It really confirms those same details. The regulations confirm the details that are outlined in those previous documents.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Solomon Israel from the Winnipeg Free Press. La prochaine question est de Solomon Israel du Winnipeg Free Press. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Hi there. My question's for Mr. Costin, and I'm just glancing through the regulations pretty quickly. I see that there are maximum THC potency limits for ingestible oils and for products that are intended to be administered rectally or vaginally. But I just want to confirm that there is no maximum THC potency limit on dried cannabis, just to make sure I understand that correctly. And if that is the case, I'm wondering if you could just explain the reasoning behind that decision. Thanks.
So thanks for the question. So your view of the regulations is correct. So the THC thresholds are described vis-a-vis the product form of oil. I'd sort of point you to Section 100 that does talk about limits of THC vis-a-vis dried, but it isn't a limit per se. As to the policy rationale for that, I think this is an issue that was considered closely going as far back as the task force. It was I think looked at very closely as the bill proceeded through both houses of Parliament. Really, I think the way to summarize the policy rationale is really to look back at the goal of the Act and the fundamental interest in moving to a regulated marketplace, and with an understanding that there are significant varieties of cannabis, some with high levels of THC. This is consistent with the medical regulations that exist today, that there is not a hard cap on the potency of dried cannabis. There are a number of safeguards and control measures that would look to inform consumers as to the potency of cannabis, so they would have an understanding of what it is they're consuming. But as a means to move to a regulated, diverse marketplace that can compete with the illegal marketplace and successfully achieve the government's objectives, I think those, alongside, I think many of the other discussions that have occurred over the last couple of years around this particular question, would be, I think, my quick summary to your question.
Okay, just to follow up and make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. When you're talking about in Section 100, the limit of the net weight of dried cannabis, I'm looking at that. That seems to me like it's saying that in, for example, a discrete unit such as a pre-rolled joint, there could be no more than 1 gram of dried cannabis. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from Rita Campbell from Now Magazine. La prochaine question est de Rita Campbell du Now Magazine. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Hi, bonjour. I was wondering, for the micro licenses as well as the nursery licenses, will there be limits in terms of how many licenses a person or company could hold? Like, would they be able to have multiple licenses?
Hi there, it's John Clare, the Director of Policy, Legislative and Regulatory Affairs at Health Canada. So there is no limit on the number of micro licenses, cultivation or processing that a single individual can hold.
Merci.
Next question is from James Smith from CBC News. La prochaine question est de James Smith du Nouvelle Radio-Canada. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Hi there. I'm wondering about when you will start issuing the microproduction licenses. Will you allow microproduction licenses to be side by side to each other? And will you allow for vertical farming?
Okay, so thanks for the question. So the regulations will come into force on October 17th, and so that would be the first. No license can be issued until the regulations are in force. Your question, I'll kind of go to your third question around vertical farming next. The 200 square meter threshold that referenced earlier in an earlier question, that applies whether you're talking about a surface like a single surface, ground floor surface, or whether you're going to take your 200 meters and stack it over 4 floors. The total surface area of a micro cultivator cannot exceed 200 meters, whether that's a single floor or as many as you could reasonably configure. Yeah, it's John. I'll just add to that. That precision is found in subsection 13.2 of the regulations. And then you had a question about whether or not microsites could be adjacent to each other. So the regulations do not set out a limit on whether or not microsites are adjacent. But of course, all sites for any license would be subject to municipal zoning bylaws.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Marie Vastel from Le Devoir. La prochaine question est de Marie Vastel du journal Le Devoir. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I was wondering if there was any update on regulations around exterior production. Are there any security measures that you've clarified or any rules that growers will have to follow if it's outside?
So the security provisions, the physical security provisions, are frankly the same for indoor as they are for outdoor. And so they are differentiated only between micro and standard. So let me put it a slightly different way. If you're contemplating growing outdoors on a surface area that will exceed 200 square meters, and that would make you a standard cultivator, the requirements that the regulations set out for a physical barrier, visual monitoring system, so video cameras of some kind, intrusion detection mechanisms, records that log the movement of people in and out of that area, and so forth, those would apply equally indoor as they would to outdoor.
But there's no, like, let's say, precision for outdoor to say you need to have some sort of, it's not a roof, but like a fence on top of it to make sure that you can't access it from the air. I was reading a Globe story that mentioned, a drone could somehow steal plants. I don't know how that would work, but there's no specification as to if it's outdoors, you have to take extra measures or specific measures.
The regulations, the way that they kind of address some of the situations that you're describing is really that the regulations require that the license holder take the appropriate steps to prevent unauthorized access.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Adam Hurus from the New Brunswick Telegraph. La prochaine question est de Adam Huras. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I have a further question outlining outdoor cultivation, just to follow up on the last caller. Can you just go over, I guess, who can do it, and then the rules around those different people allowed to do it in terms of, large industrial or commercial users versus micro?
I might need to ask you to maybe clarify what you're looking for when you say who's allowed to do it. Do you want me to just kind of outline the licensing framework, or are you looking for something different?
Yeah, in terms of, I guess, is everyone allowed outdoor cultivation, I guess, and then the specific rules to those groups?
All right. So I'll try to answer your question. So if you want any entity, right, any business, any individual who wants to get in the business of cultivating cannabis. So I use the word business intentionally. We're not talking about people who are growing 4 plants for themselves. The rules are very clear that if you grow 4 plants or less for yourself, you can't sell it. There's no business dimension to it. If you want to get into the licensed regulated industry, you need a license from Health Canada. So there's an involved process that is in many ways well established under our program for medical cannabis production, whereby we look very carefully at many facets of the proposed business to ensure that they are consistent with the regulations. We look very closely at the individuals who are putting forward the application. There's no this same process, the same scrutiny, the same vetting would occur regardless if the proponent is bringing forward an application for an outdoor or an indoor site. So perhaps is that getting at your question?
Yes, and follow up, can provinces ban commercial outdoor cultivation or outdoor cultivation altogether? Do they have that authority?
So this is another question that's been discussed quite a bit. I think the response that the government, the ministers and the Prime Minister have provided on that particular question is the purpose of the Federal Act is clear. The intent of the government to end a prohibition is, I think, been well articulated. The legislation was designed in such a manner to give provincial and territorial governments, and through them, frankly, local governments, the ability to tailor rules to a certain degree. And I think any determination on whether or not any additional rules that a province would put forward is in conflict with the federal law would be something that would be determined by a court. But I'm speaking now looking at my Department of Justice colleagues and see if they want to correct me.
If I understand the question correctly, and please let me know, I hear you asking if a province could perhaps ban commercial outdoor cultivation. Is that correct? So if that is correct, then I would suggest that you would look to municipal zoning bylaws to understand how they intend on managing outdoor and indoor cultivation in their own region.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Daniel Leblanc from the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Yes, I'm looking at section. There seems to be kind of new information in here about transparency or financial transparency that must be disclosed to the minister. I think it's part 11, section 241. Can you just give me a sense of what is new in this and whether or not this is retroactive in terms of investors? I see an exception of key investors before issuance. And so can I get a better sense possible as to what is being required here and who needs to answer those, provide that information?
Well, thank you for the question. So, as has been stated before, under the Cannabis Act, the Minister of Health has the authority to require applicants for a license to provide financial information, and that is set out at the level of the Cannabis Act. And so as a result, any new application for a cultivation or processing license will need to provide information about persons such as parent companies or major investors who are in a position to control directly or indirectly the license applicant. Separately, the provisions that you're referring to in Section 241 of the cannabis regulations will require privately held license holders to maintain a record of information respecting key investors. So this will be an ongoing record that they'll need to modify as new information, relevant information or activities meet the trigger. They'll be added to the record. And as you point out, that record will need to be submitted to the Minister of Health on an annual basis. So what this information or what this record needs to include is kind of significant investments or financial activities with what are called key investors in the regulations. So these are persons who, by virtue of their investment or ownership interest or financial relationship, are in a position to exercise direct or indirect control over the license holder. So this may be someone who owns a majority of shares in the company or someone who has loaned a significant amount of money to the license holder and is in a position to call in the loan, which would have an adverse impact on the operations of the license holder. Required information, I'll just finish. The required information will include details like the amount of money invested or the amount loaned, the benefit received as a result. So is there a share or an ownership interest or a lien on the property, and whether that benefit has been assigned to another person.
When you use the word significant, is there a threshold? Is there kind of a precise definition of what that means? And does this cover basically concerns over tax havens? Does this go around the concerns over the anonymity of potential investors?
So the key the threshold is whether or not the investment comes from what is referred to as a key investor, and this is defined in the regulations. So if you look to subsection 9, it provides that definition of a key investor. So it's essentially someone who is in that position to exercise direct control or indirect control, or what is often referred to as control in fact. And so a determination of that obviously depends on the specific circumstances, and Health Canada will work with regulated parties to essentially make sure that they understand the types of investors, what are those key investors that would trigger the requirement to maintain information about their activities with these investors.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Max Paris from CBC News. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Hi there. You guys have created a number of different licensing categories. And I guess what I'm curious about is what are the steps to basically apply for licenses? Is there like an application form? Do you have to basically read the regulations and put together a package based on your reading and understanding of the regulations? And I guess who do you send this package to? Is there like a specific person at Health Canada? Anyway, I'd be interested to hear that.
Okay, thanks for the question. So in my remarks, I made a brief reference to something called the Cannabis Tracking and Licensing System. I mostly described the system insofar as it will be the kind of the electronic, the means by which we have regulated parties report into the department per the regulations, and allows us to monitor inventories and the movement of cannabis through the supply chain. The other important function of this system is that it will serve to do exactly what you've just asked about. So it will be the means by which, the mechanism through which interested persons submit an application to the department. And it's been designed in such a way that it is naturally compliant with the regulations, but it allows the applicant through, we think, a simple manner to navigate the regulations and submit the necessary information to us. We are absolutely developing a series of guidance documents, including an application guide. We will be making that document public in the not so distant future. And as per an earlier question, I think it's an important detail to know that the issuance of new licenses could not occur until after coming into force.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Kyle Dugan from iPolitics. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like you to walk me through people who have previous pot convictions, who have had past illicit convictions, either for possession or for sorts of things. Where do they fit into this? What are they allowed to do, and what are they prohibited from doing?
So I think your question really comes to the provisions regarding personnel security and the need to have a security clearance. And so I think in responding to your question, the goal behind issuing a security clearance is to ensure that no individual who poses a direct risk or threat to public safety and public health, and in this case, namely through direct or indirect links to organized crime or other behaviors, serious criminality, that would lead us to lead the minister to make a determination that the individual poses an unacceptable risk. So each of those, so with each application, per sort of an earlier question, key individuals must submit through us, and we work closely with the RCMP, certain information that allows us to collect information and make a determination about whether or not to issue that security clearance. The regulations do not specifically or automatically exclude individuals with past histories. So in a case where someone does have a past history with cannabis, we would look at all of the facts before us and make a determination on whether issuing that person a clearance would in fact pose a risk or not.
And if I can, I'll just add to what my colleague said. It's really important to note that there are only certain positions within a licensed organization that would require a security clearance from the Minister of Health. So that's set out in Section 50. So it is specific positions that, because of their responsibilities, their oversight of different parts of the operation, are in a position to direct or control others in a manner that, should that person, that position be filled by someone with, with these associations or histories would represent a risk. Those are the ones that require a clearance.
Okay, I also wanted to ask about whether you could update us on the supply situation. I know that there are more than 100 LPs now, but I just want to know if there will be, based on your projections, will there be enough supply to meet demand? And are you prepared for the possibility of any kind of supply disruptions or shortages, because demand is hard to kind of figure out?
Yeah, no. So to your last comment, I mean, there have been a number of different kind of estimates as to what demand will be on certainly on at the beginning. There's I think some significant variability across those different estimates. I guess the way I would answer your question is really in two ways. So the first is recognizing that having a well-functioning supplied system when the Act and the regulations come into force is critical. The department recognized this going back more than a year now, where we made a number of, I think, important and meaningful changes to the manner in which we processed licenses under the medical cannabis regulations, the way that we administered licenses and considered requests for expansions and amendments to licenses, all with a view of ensuring that the industry that exists today was able to move forward and prepare in anticipation for the changes that lay ahead. The other dimension of the answer is really kind of looks to the work that we're doing with provinces and territories, and I think this gets to your specific question about products being on the shelves on October 17th, as it were. So we've been working very, very closely across all provinces and territories now for over 2 years, with very, very careful planning across all the jurisdictional lines to ensure that we have as clear an understanding as possible about the state of readiness, what the retail space will look like in all provinces and territories. There are limits, of course, to which we can go to sort of declaring, with absolute certainty, what the supply will be on opening day. I can just sort of indicate that all levels of government, working with the industry, have been making every effort to ensure that when opening day occurs, there will be products, and I'll stop there.
Thank you. The next question is from Catherine Collin from CBC. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Well, in fact, I'm going to ask you not to stop just there, because I just want you to be clear. You're saying that you're confident, that you can't be certain, but you're relatively confident that there's going to be enough supply?
I'm saying that we with our provincial and territorial partners, as the regulator, I think we've taken a number of decisive steps to be confident. Yes.
Okay. The question I wanted to ask you, going back to Kyle's question about the limits of criminal records, can you be clear about whether or not, if someone had past convictions for cannabis trafficking specifically, is that the kind of thing that might? It's not clear to me whether that would be something that was viewed as being involved in organized crime. Is that a deal breaker?
It really it's difficult to say kind of categorically yes or no. We really do look at all of the facts surrounding a particular case, and so the reason why the regulations are written the way they are is frankly born of many years' experience looking at many individual cases, and we really do make the determination of risk based on the particular facts. So the wording does not necessarily is not crafted in a way where it would be an automatic exclusion. We would look at all of the details of a particular individual's situation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from Catherine Tooney from CBC News. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I also have not gone through the 400 pages yet on this call, so I was just wondering if there's anything in there about the individual sale of a joint. Can someone go into a convenience store or another producer and buy a joint?
So the sale of cannabis is, especially for the purpose of I think this discussion, is governed by provincial and territorial rules. So only authorized sellers in a province and territory will be authorized to sell. The bill does include provisions with respect to sale, but these are designed largely in the context of continuing the medical access program. So if someone wants to go buy a joint, they buy it at a provincially or territorially authorized outlet.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Mélanie Marquis from De la Presse Canadienne. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Oui, bonjour. Ma question est pour Madame Labelle. Je veux juste revenir sur une question qui a été posée un peu plus tôt, à savoir, est-ce que les provinces, en vertu du règlement, est-ce que les provinces ont le droit d'interdire la culture commerciale de cannabis à l'extérieur? Pas personnelle, là, commerciale.
Oui, j'ai bien compris. Merci pour la question. Je crois que ça va être une question de fait, à savoir comment le territoire est régi. Donc, dans certaines municipalités, il va y avoir des règlements qui portent sur l'utilisation du terrain agricole, par exemple. Et est-ce que la municipalité va souhaiter ou non de permettre la cultivation à l'extérieur ou uniquement à l'intérieur? Et je crois que ça, c'est du ressort du gouvernement régional, municipal, local.
Parfait. Puis, Madame Labelle aussi, sur une autre question qui a été reposée, j'aurais aimé avoir des questions plus intelligentes à poser, mais 400 pages envoyées comme ça juste avant la conférence de presse, c'est difficile à digérer. Sur la question de l'approvisionnement, est-ce que vous êtes confiant que le 17 octobre et dans les semaines qui vont suivre, il y aura suffisamment de cannabis récréatif pour suffire à la demande?
Comme l'ont expliqué mes collègues, plusieurs mesures ont été prises visant l'entrée en vigueur de la loi et de l'accessibilité du cannabis à des fins non médicales. Comme vous le savez, il y a plusieurs provinces qui ont déjà mis en place des ententes avec des cultivateurs, des transformateurs pour avoir une garantie d'un certain montant de kilogrammes de cannabis qui sera disponible. Au niveau fédéral, il y a eu l'émission de plusieurs permis de licence pour accélérer le processus de cultivation et de production et d'accès pour le 17 octobre. Donc, comme mes collègues l'ont indiqué, oui, il y a un niveau de confiance qui nous permet de croire que ce qui va être les attentes au 17 octobre seront rencontrées.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Alicia Sikierska from the Financial Post. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Hi. So you mentioned that you'll be monitoring the movement of cannabis through the supply chain. I haven't tracked it down in the regulations so far, but will there be specific licenses for carriers who transport larger quantities of product from producers to retailers? And will it be regulated in a similar way to, say, how alcohol and tobacco is transported? Any details about the specific regulation of the movement of cannabis? That would be helpful.
Yeah, thanks for your question. So there is not a specific license category for the transportation of cannabis. Essentially, license holders, federal license holders, whether they be a cultivator or a processor, are responsible and accountable for the safekeeping of cannabis during distribution, and that's found at Section 47 of the regulation. And that's similar to the way the rules operate currently.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The line is cutting in and out. The line is cutting in and out.
I'll repeat that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's clear now. Thanks.
Okay. So I was just saying that under the regulatory framework, it'll be federally licensed cultivators, processors, who will be responsible for ensuring the safekeeping of cannabis during transport, and there will be no specific license for the transportation of cannabis. And this requirement for safekeeping is found at Section 47 of the regulation. And essentially, the way the regime works, anyone who is retained by a licensed company to transport cannabis on their behalf are basically subject to provisions in the Cannabis Act itself, which essentially make them kind of subject to the authorizations, terms, and conditions of the company that has hired them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Maxime Huard from l'agence QMI. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Oui, bonjour. Ma question porte spécifiquement sur les exigences de transparence financière. on a entendu beaucoup là, depuis le dépôt du projet de loi que c'était possible qu'il y ait des investissements provenant de paradis fiscaux dans des compagnies. Puis, je voulais savoir s'il y a une attention particulière portée à ça, si ça fait partie si c'est un critère là, qui fait partie des exigences que vous avez énumérées pour ce qui est des dispositions là, sur la transparence financière.
Le règlement vise les investisseurs clés. Et,
la ligne coupe encore, s'il vous plaît. Peut-être ne pas toucher à votre appareil.
Non, mais ça fait ça depuis le début, là. Je touche à rien.
Je parle pas de vous, M. Huard.
Et merci. Je vais essayer de répondre tout près du microphone. J'espère que vous pouvez m'entendre maintenant.
Oui, c'est mieux.
Le règlement traite d'abord des investisseurs clés. Les investisseurs clés peuvent justement se trouver dans un paradis fiscal, mais ça ne vise pas uniquement les paradis fiscaux. Ça vise les investisseurs, peu importe où ils sont situés ou comment ils font leurs investissements. Et ces dispositions sont aux articles 241 et suivantes.
OK, donc est-ce que ça veut dire qu'un investisseur qu'on trouverait, disons, basé dans un paradis fiscal ou qui tremperait là-dedans, est-ce que ça serait un critère qui pourrait exclure quelqu'un d'obtenir une licence?
Tel que l'expliquait mes collègues, tout d'abord, c'est que tout dépend du cas. Ça va être du cas par cas et selon les faits. Alors, est-ce que cette personne, à partir de ses investissements et à partir de son comportement avec les investissements, pose un risque à la sécurité du régime du cannabis? Et donc, c'est à partir de cette analyse que nous allons procéder à savoir si la personne doit avoir une habilitation de sécurité ou si cet investissement pose un risque tel que le titulaire de la licence doit être averti et des mesures prises en conséquence.
Thank you. Merci. There are no further questions registered at this time. Il n'y a plus de questions à ce moment-ci. I would now like to turn the meeting back to Mr. Morissette. À vous la parole.
Thank you. This will be all for today's technical briefing. Any additional questions can be directed to Health Canada Media Relations Unit at 613-957-2983 or by email at hc.media.sc@canada.ca. La séance est maintenant terminée. On vous remercie de votre participation. Si vous avez d'autres questions, n'hésitez pas à communiquer avec le Bureau des relations avec le Canada par courriel hc.media.sc@canada.ca. Merci.
Thank you. The conference is now ended. Please disconnect your lines at this time, and we thank you for your participation.
So what are you doing? Nothing. Nothing? Why not? Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website. Sounds like a cool website. Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it. You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.